Good evening and welcome. Well, in just a couple of days, possibly on Sunday itself, India will commission its first homegrown nuclear ballistic missile submarine. This is not just another unveiling of a weapon system. This is possibly the single most important military acquisition for the country, since it is one of the bedrocks on which our nuclear deterrent is based. It's taken decades in the making, and no one wants to spell out the details just yet, but it's clear that INS Arihant, when it's unveiled in Visakhapatnam, will mean that India has joined a very select group of nations which build and operate their own nuclear submarines. On the show this evening, India's finest nuclear strategists and thinkers and naval experts to explain the significance of this development. Brahma Chellaney, Subrahmanyam and Admiral Menon, a former submariner himself and also a naval expert. They're all with us this evening. But before we start our discussion, just why is acquiring a nuclear submarine such a step forward for our strategic plans? But before we start, let's also mention that it's not just the nuclear ballistic missile submarine being launched in Visakhapatnam, which India is acquiring. Later this year, India will also be acquiring a nuclear attack submarine, which many consider among the finest in the world. So two important distinctions over here. There's a nuclear ballistic missile submarine and there's a nuclear attack submarine. We'll get to the difference over there. But what is it that India is acquiring from Russia? Russia is set to transfer the Akula II class nuclear attack submarine. It's called the Nerpa. The submarine is likely to be recommissioned as INS Chakra. Remember, INS Chakra is a nuclear submarine that India had acquired once from Russia between 1988 and 1991 approximately. But the Akula II class submarine, which India will be acquiring, is widely considered the most advanced nuclear attack submarine built by Russia till date. And as I was mentioning, India had leased a Charlie class nuclear submarine from Russia between 1988 and 1991, which it had then named INS Chakra. These names, Charlie, Akula and the like, are NATO designated names. It's pretty much the global standard. The Russians don't think too much about them. But let's try and talk a little bit more about the significance of this. Dr. Brahma Chellaney, this is going to be the bedrock of our nuclear deterrent, the nuclear ballistic missile submarine. Why?
Because the nuclear ballistic missile submarine is the preferred option for small nuclear forces. In fact, without this option, our first use posture wouldn't make much sense. For the no first use posture to make sense, you need to be able to survive a first strike and be able to retaliate. And therefore, to have a sea-based deterrent is at the core of our search for a credible but minimal nuclear deterrent. And right now we have major gaps in our deterrent posture vis-a-vis China. So I guess this particular development is an important step forward.
All right, Mr. Subrahmanyam, I've discussed this with you in the past as well, and you made a very pertinent point in the past that India might now have a ballistic missile submarine, but to actually have a useful operational fleet, India would need to have many more such submarines. Is that right?
Yes, we will be needing many more submarines. If we are to have 2 submarines on station, you would require 6 submarines for the country, and therefore we will have to continue to produce 5-6 submarines.
Tuba.com